and welcome to today's painting demonstration. My name is Leah and I teach acrylic painting every week, and today I'm going to show you how to do this wonderful, almost magical gem tone forest painting. I have the reference material available for you on my community Discord server, and the link is in the description below. I am going to attempt to paint this with a very warm underpainting, and then we're going to build up the layers from there. So I have my thumbnail here where I've worked out a very general composition, and then I have done a little bit of the pencil work on the hot press color, what is it, watercolor paper that I'm working on today. My weekly painting tutorials are always on this hot press watercolor block. I find that it works really well with acrylic paint. You can use a lot of water, and the paint still binds to the surface really well. I'm going to start with the lightest value this time of the underpainting. Actually most of the time I'll start with the darkest value, but this time I'm going to start with the lightest value, and I'm going to start with that very middle area, and I'm going to radiate out, and I am just using cadmium yellow. There's going to be a glowy space in the middle that's going to have a triangular shape to it. So there's going to be a little bit of a point in the middle. Not so much on top. It's going to go from yellow to more of a white, and then very subtly cool sky blue up top, but that'll be at the end. Now I'm going to pick up the burnt sienna, and I'm going to start in the corner bottom. That's going to be our darkest areas, the corners and the bottom. And using a very large filbert brush, I am going to drag up from these two corners. I'm going to work my way to the middle where I've illustrated a little path. As I want the burnt sienna to be a little bit lighter, I'm just adding water to my brush and not any more paint. Now I'm up in the top half, and I'm just gonna cover the rest of the white that's here. I'm gonna try to smooth the edges a little bit. It's not too important at this time. Now I'm going back to the path, and I'm putting some horizontal strokes there. That is it for the underpainting. With the same filbert brush, I'm going to get it nice and clean. I'm going to pick up some titanium white and go to the very middle of the scene. And using vertical brush strokes, I am going to blend that to the sides. Okay, so I think I'm going to switch to my smaller filbert brush at this time. So I'm going to do some blending, and I don't want the brush strokes to be quite that big. This area that we painted with our underpainting is already pretty dry. I'm adding some more burnt sienna to the corners to darken it up a bit more before I put the next layer of color on. Now I'm using the burnt sienna in the tops of the trees for those warmer center branches and foliage clumps. They're extremely warm. And anywhere where these little pencil marks are going to show through, I'm going to add a couple layers there. I'm going to be negative painting in order to make these a little less dense. I'm throwing in some cadmium yellow on the bottom areas to make them a little bit lighter and warmer. And as I drag that color up, I'm just going to apply the brush with firmer pressure so that it smears it over the previous color. That'll give you a smoother gradient. Burnt sienna is going to go into a magenta next. And so now I'm ready to pick up just a little bit of magenta and using the very, very similar brush strokes, just scrub it onto the burnt sienna and drag it across. Don't be afraid to use a little bit of water if you want more transparency. All of the colors that we use so far are pretty transparent as it is, so it should be fairly easy to get a convincing transition. There's not much horizontal space left, so I'm gonna want to go deeper purple. The purple that I'm going to use is going to be a mix of the magenta and cerulean blue. About a 50-50 combo there. Same technique with the foliage, except for this time with the purple, I'm going all the way down. All the way down to the bottom of the painting. Now same thing on the other side. I'm going to pick up a little bit more blue and transition that purple to a cooler shade of it. Okay, so now what I think I want to do here is start doing some tree trunks. And the layering's going to be kind of tricky. I might go back and forth a bit, but I am going to switch to my flat brush. It's a 1/4 inch flat brush. And to do these trunks, the ones towards the back are going to be more diffused. The ones towards the center of the composition are more like a soft sorbet orange. And then just it's going to get a little bit darker coming away from there. So using the sharp side of the flat, I'm just going to drag up. And then once I get a couple of those, I'm just going to add a touch of cadmium red, and then a little bit further from the middle. And then again, a little bit more red, and then add a few more. Now this is a square composition, so there's not as much space. As there could be if you had a rectangle, but I think we get the gist of it there. Now these colors that I just mixed, I can take those up into the upper arbor. And if you want to use your filbert for this, that would help keep those brush strokes consistent with what you have up there already. As long as you're using the same scrubbing circular maneuver, then they will look pretty similar. Okay, so the trees, as they come towards us, they're getting darker, 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 because we are away from the light source. So I'm going to pick up a magenta with just a little bit of burnt sienna in it. These are the trees that I've penciled in. Those magenta trees are pretty bright. I would say they pull quite a bit of attention. I am going to make all of the big trees that same color and then darken the ones that are a little bit further away from us, at least on the away side of the light. Okay, so this smaller tree needs to be a little bit lighter. It can't be quite that dark. So I'm just going to add a little bit of white to the magenta and then some yellow. And hopefully that gives us a value that looks good in that spot. Put another one of those on the other side, and maybe a third one on this side so that color doesn't look alien. Just incorporating it in. Now I like that color for the background foliage on the ground. So I'm going to mix just a slightly lighter version and start in the background. Using the flat, I'm going to pull some brush strokes up to mimic grass, and then after I put some grass in, I'm going to use a different brush stroke to signify shrubs. I'm only going to do about the middle third with this color, and then I'm going to get darker as I come away from the middle. Want that back, the furthest foliage to be a little bit lighter. Just added a little bit of white and a little bit of yellow. I think one more step lighter. So just white and yellow and a little bit of water on the brush. I'll try to blend that into the light that's coming from back there. Okay, now I'm coming down and away from that light area in the background. And I'm going to get darker, darker, darker with my gem tones. Still using mostly magenta. I'm going to connect to those big magenta trees as well. Pulling that magenta paint over some of the blue, but not all of it. I don't want to cover all of that. Mix some medium orange for the remaining areas that need ground foliage. That can peek out in between the trees. And just come around a little bit. Just make sure every tree ends in some sort of ground foliage. Alright, that's starting to look pretty magical, but it's really gonna pull together when we paint the negative shapes in. So I'm just gonna put a couple of more defined leaf shapes in the ground, in the mid-ground, bottom half. Make a nice medium orange, and just in little groups, as if there's an imaginary bush. Okay. I haven't done a thing with the path yet, so I do want to make it a little bit darker as we come forward. So I have a little bit of magenta, a little bit, about 50-50 magenta, burnt sienna, and a whole bunch of water in my brush, and I'm going to use horizontal brush strokes. And I'm going to start from the area of the path that is at the edge of the painting. And I'm just going to sketch some lines and go all the way back. And as I'm all the way back towards that light source, I'm going to let the paint get really thin. And you can even blot off some of the paint. And let it just disappear into that yellow area. See how I left a little bit of the underpainting just to give it an impression that there's light hitting some of that path as you go back. Okay, now we're going to do a little bit of detail work. I'm picking up my #1 liner. And I want to add some branches on these trees, foreground trees. I don't really want to touch any of the background trees. We're just going to do negative painting to give them a little bit of magic. I'm using just magenta. I'm adding little side bumps too along with these little branches. And a lot of these are, I imagine this is the kind of tree where most of the lower branches have fallen off. They've been knocked off by trees or branches above them falling down. That's what I think happens there. All along their journey to become taller. All right, now to the right size trees. Defining the edges on this one a little bit more as well. There's a little bit of overlap of what would be the foliage behind this tree. So this is a good time to clean any of that kind of thing up. Ooh, this one especially, this one got covered with all sorts. It is a pretty incredibly saturated color. Now I need to add some branches to these further back trees. So that's an orange with some white. I'm going to highlight the sun side of this tree so that it's pretty well incorporated with the color I just mixed. These are tiny branches on those far background. And now there's the yellow, and those are the lightest trees in the very back. It's just a dark yellow. Here's what I'm hoping. I'm gonna put that somewhere inconspicuous first before putting that in the center. Okay, there. I'm gonna add a little bit of the yellow with the script brush, just a touch to the highlight areas. Not the whole thing, just a little bit on a couple of edges coming into the foreground. Okay, great, that looks good. Now, to do some negative painting, and this will really bring the whole thing alive. Although I do like what's happening here, and it's very saturated and very magical looking. I'm debating whether I'm going to go with my 1/4 inch flat to start the process. I think for some of these beginning brush strokes this will be just fine. So I'm going to branch off the titanium white and just the smallest touch of cerulean blue. Because next to this much warm color, it's going to look really blue. So you don't need to use very much. Coming down from the middle, I am going to bury thoughtfully. Cut in some sky. Just keep in mind where your tree trunks are as you're doing this, and what you're going to want to do is get progressively smaller as you come down into this forest. Okay, now I'm going to put away the flat because now it's already too big. I'm going to switch over to my 3-0 point. Using mostly white, and I'm going to sharpen my brush inside my palette. I'm going to continue those little tree holes coming down, continuing to be mindful with the placement. Also trying to lay this on thick as well. And I'm going to drag that very clean white onto the middle back. And I could just paint that in a column of light. Try not to go over any of those trunks or any of those little branches, just go in between, and you can leave a lot of space and leave it very vague with soft edges. You can let the eye fill in the blanks. And as I come away from the middle, as I come down and away from the middle, there's just going to be fewer and fewer and smaller sky holes. I'm adding a little bit more white to the bottom of what seemed a little too blue for the middle. I'm just going to adjust that color a bit. Just became a little too blue for my taste. Okay, that's looking pretty fun. Now, I'm not going to add any branch work to the bottom of this painting. I like that vague, soft, ethereal. Your focus is not there. So if you were to add some hardline branch work to this area here, it may well seem logical to your mind that, yeah, of course branches would be holding up those leaves, but that would pull too much attention from you gently moving your eye into the warm distance. So that's why I'm going to leave those out. I also feel like it's just magical and soft, and I want to keep it right where it is. This one's going to look really nice after the tape peel. I feel like it's going to get those edges really clean, and then all these little stained glass looking sections, the hard edges on those will look nice with a clean edge. So I hope that you were able to come along on that painting adventure. I felt like that one was pretty fun and pretty loose, and started with some technical difficulties today, so I'm glad that we can get this tutorial done using very, very saturated colors. That was our last fall tutorial, so look forward to some more spooky evening scenes leading up to Halloween and then on into winter. So thank you so much for joining in on this painting tutorial, and until next week, happy painting!